because it's meant to be stable based on the name, right? But it hasn't always been so. In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know about stablecoins. Let's start with 5 main types of stablecoins. Those will be the fiat-backed, algorithmic, cryptocurrency-backed, commodity-backed or commodity-tied, and flat coins. Fiat-backed, as the name suggests, are just stables that are one-to-one backed by fiat money. Most of the time, that is just USD. There are some euro stable coins, but those are not very popular. The most popular ones are USDT and USDC, both of which are pegged to the US dollar. And for that, as the name suggests, they have $1 in reserve, ideally, hopefully, for every dollar that they emit on chain. People have relied on fiat-backed cryptocurrencies for a while, and those have been the most stable out of the types, I would say. However, they kind of defeat the whole purpose of crypto being decentralized, because you are just coming back to the bank reserves and you're using bank reserves and US bonds and stuff like that to back your stables, hopefully. So it kind of defeats the whole purpose of decentralization, as I said. So people come up with crypto-backed stablecoins. Those are practically the same thing. They are pegged to the US dollar and they represent one US dollar value on chain for one coin. However, instead of having US bonds, treasury bonds, stuff like that, and cash equivalents in the reserves, they have cryptocurrency. The most popular example is DAI from MakerDAO. It is also tied to US dollar. However, its backing is over-collateralized. That means for every $1 of DAI coin as a stable coin, you have about $1.50 or more in ETH or BTC or other cryptocurrencies backing it. If you think about it, having 150% over-collateralization for a stable coin to have just $1 worth of value is not very capital efficient. So people decided, what if we just don't have collateral at all, or have very little or partial collateral? And that's how algorithmic stablecoins came about. And those are just stables that don't really have a backing for every dollar that they emit on chain, and instead they have code or algorithms that are designed to maintain its value. And there is also an added market incentive. So most of the time they work by having a dual token model where one coin gets minted or burnt, and there are some kind of lockups in a smart contract so that one coin can absorb the volatility of the other. And thanks to the market incentives and traders and arbitrageurs, the one coin that is meant to be stable maintains its stable value. It's a little bit more complicated and complex in design, as you're gonna hear basically from my explanation, and it hasn't worked the best, I would say. There is an infamous collapse of the most famous algorithmic stablecoin called Terra Luna UST. So UST collapsed in 2022, and there was basically a death spiral during which the whole peg was no longer maintained and people lost a lot of money. And this brought a lot of kind of a shadow and dark side to crypto. And since then, people don't really trust algorithmic stablecoins. But we'll see if anybody comes up with a new design that could work. But as of right now, they are really not popular. So what else can we do? Those are still stable coins. Neither of those is perfect. So people thought, what if we, instead of tying the value and backing it with dollars, what if we tie the value to something like gold? So there emerged a commodity-backed stable, that is PAXG Gold. That's the most famous one. Some of them are just pegged to the value of some commodities, such as gold. And there is an algorithmic model there. However, it's very difficult to trust. Again, it's very similar issues to the algorithmic stables, and some of them are actually representing the value of the commodity in reserves. For example, the gold-backed stable coins. However, they're very niche and they would require very really hardcore audits for me to trust them personally. I would not trust a stablecoin that just says we have the golden reserves. Where is that? Please tell me everything about that. So kind of a completely new narrative that has been emerging in more recently, those are flat coins. Flat coins are, instead of trying to maintain its stable value in nominal terms, i.e. in terms of dollars, they try to maintain their real value. That means they try to maintain their purchasing power over time. That can be done in different ways, and there are flat coins such as those that pegged to the US inflation index. So for example, they use an oracle that allows them to fetch the data about what is the percentage of inflation each year, so that they can adjust the coin to worth, instead of $1, it will be worth $1 plus inflation. So 1 year from now, the coin that I bought for $1 would worth $1.05 if the inflation was 5%, for example. And there are different ways that those are done, not just by oracles. They can be also done via some interesting mechanisms. It could be extremely useful, extremely valuable in the long term, but I wouldn't say that any coin has managed to accomplish this until now. So right now the attempts have been made by Nuon. Nuon is a project that launched quite some time ago in 2022. I think it launched on Arbitrum, and they claim to be the very first flat coin that tied itself to inflation. So they used an oracle to fetch the data about the US inflation, and they adjusted the price of the coin using a smart contract and having a collateral for that. However, looking at Nuon now, it really is not going anywhere. Its market cap is like 100K. They launched Nuon V2 and they didn't do anything. So I'm a little bit confused where exactly that is going on. If you know anything about Nuon and what it's going to do or what it's doing now, please let me know in the comments. I would be very curious. But then the other one that is a little bit larger, it has like 30 million market cap last time I checked, and it's called Ampleforth or AMPL for the ticker, and it targets the 2019's USD value of purchasing power. So instead of a $1 fixed peg, or instead of the oracle that adjusts it to the price of inflation, what they do, they basically adjust the amount of coins in your wallet. So with all these designs, the only thing I'm concerned about is how exactly the collateral is maintained and how much collateral you have to have. So let's say you put $1 right now in 2025, but then it's not going to be enough in later. So it's going to be under collateralized later. So then people will have to come in and put in more collateral for your coins. Would that mean that there is a certain pyramid scheme? I don't really know. Like, how is this supposed to work like this? Maybe I'm like confusing myself or making this too complicated, but with these designs, I think there are just too many hurdles that are very similar to algorithmic stables. So I'm really not sure about the long-term sustainability of these types of coins without any more interesting mechanisms involved. Additionally, there is also regulatory kind of treatment of those could be a little bit blurred, because what is it? Is like a derivative? Is it an index? How would that be treated? Because that's no longer just a stable, right? Because people expect its value to rise in the future because people expect the inflation to rise. So somebody could speculate on the liquidity, somebody could speculate on the volume because the volume would be low. So here it almost becomes like an altcoin at this point and not an actual stable coin. So again, I really like the idea, but I really don't think it's going to work just by using an oracle for inflation and using some kind of algorithmic model here. So what if you could just not use a US dollar and not tie to the price of the US dollar? What if you found some asset that is intrinsically more stable than the US dollar and you tied the value of the coin to it? And turns out there is such an asset, and this asset is energy. So basically, instead of using inflation, trying to predict and estimate the stability of the purchasing power over time and trying to adjust it, you could just use the resource that is inherently more stable than the USD prices and trying to make the coin worth in terms of its resources. And we already have the infrastructure for that. That is proof of work. So basically, by using proof of work, you can use the mining behavior and the electricity prices all over the world of miners who are mining to estimate the electricity prices around the world, and therefore tie the value of the coin to the cost of its production. That is mostly electricity, because over time the hardware costs have become negligible. So the concept here is kind of similar to when money was backed by actual gold instead of just being paper money. However, you cannot exchange, of course, coins back to energy, but you exchange energy for coins in a way. So there is a one-way backing of the value. So the value transfer is just energy. So I'm I'm buying things in terms of energy. And this makes sense in terms of production costs as well, because everything, if you dig deep enough, really comes down to the cost of energy to produce whatever that is. This concept was pioneered by Quai Network, and full disclosure, I work for Quai Network, so I'm a little bit biased in a positive way towards it. Because I work here, I think it's cool, but I cannot guarantee you that everything works. But it is designed to work this way, and that's why I work here. So take everything with a grain of salt, because I'm a little bit biased in a positive way, but I do think it's a cool idea. Let me know if you would like me to dive deeper into any of the aspects I talked about. Also, please do let me know if I made any mistakes. But as it stands now, there are two major stablecoins, USDT and USDC, and they capture over 90% of the market, and those are fiat-backed stables. And that's what people feel most comfortable with. There is nothing wrong with that, although that is very kind of going away from the ethos of crypto. That is still a very valid and very useful use case. For example, for countries that don't have access to the US dollar via their banks or in any other ways. So I think everything, the whole landscape is about to really become even stronger in the future, especially as the pay-fi narrative rises. And I would also keep an eye on the Flatcoin narrative, because a crypto asset, a crypto native asset that doesn't rely on central bank infrastructure to have its value would be extremely valuable. Like right now, the closest we have to actually store our purchasing power is Bitcoin, and many people just use that. But it is not really helpful for payments. I wouldn't pay with my Bitcoin. I would save my Bitcoin in hopes for the rising value in the future. So you really need something that is more stable in value, doesn't have the volatility of Bitcoin, and that people have the propensity to spend. So some kind of flat coin that can achieve that would really be a big deal. And I hope this works out with Quai Network and Qi, and we'll see how that comes about. Qi launches on April 16th. That's all I have for you in this video. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.